Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Doug Doppler, and welcome to Doppler's Gear Garage. If we haven't met, well, hello and welcome to the show. What we do here is we talk about guitars, gear, music, technology, and all things kind of that relate to that. One of the things we're going to be talking about today is why no names matter. And we're going to be looking at that as it relates to kind of a progression around A, and kind of one of the most important things that guitar players can learn is how to kind of find the notes that resolve against whatever chord you're working over. So in the lesson segment of today's live stream, we'll be covering that. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, there will be a link to where that section starts in the timeline. When I quote-unquote repost this, it'll automatically post to YouTube, but I'll go back and find where that segment starts. And we're also going to be talking about a new piece of gear that showed up, because one of the things that's going to be happening here in Doppler World very soon is we're going to be building a weekly rig, and we're going to be kind of breaking that down here on the show. And the concept is as follows, is that as you were kind of thinking about the different types of sounds you're going for, stylistically, within a style, what is the, if you will, the tonal palette you're going for. So all the nuances around that. What effects you're going to use before your amp or modeler, if any. What models or amps are you going to use, and then what time-based effects are you going to use after said amp models or amplifiers. So kind of today I'm using a little bit of a hybrid setup. That is my beloved Badlander 25. I'm not actually using the cabinet, it's more of a kind of an amp stand there. And I'm running out of that direct using Cab Clone IR, and I'm running into an application called Console from Universal Audio, and that's where those lovely delays and reverbs are coming from. And so it enables me to just capture the raw sound of the amplifier. If I wanted to go into my DAW, digital audio workstation with all that, it's easy to record with that sound going, but on playback, in most instances, unless I want it otherwise, that's what you're going to hear. One of the other things that's on the horizon here is there's going to be a series of videos, and we'll see how successful they are, and if they are, then they will be ongoing, but it's basically recording for newbies. So all this stuff is kind of in the wings. So let me take a quick moment and jump down in the chat and say, good morning, Chris Alexander. How are you doing, my dear friend? Brett Sackett, hello. Thank you for dropping in. Hello, hello. I should say hello. Questions of the day. How long until you pick up your pink Strat? Well, that's a funny, interesting thing. So first of all, now that we've kind of done our initial salutations for anybody who's kind of watching this on the replay or just caught the very beginning here, there is a certain amount of this show that's all about questions and answers, because the goal is, you know, I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by all this amazing gear, and I have great folks like Brett and Chris who ask excellent questions, and the topics we cover are usually pretty valuable. So a couple of things, just a brief recap. Last week we talked about string gauges, and these are these fancy custom wound heavy core 9 through 40, actually these are the 10 through 46 set that my good friends at Dunlop just sent over. And these are specifically wound for the Les Paul instruments and the Les Paul style instruments that I've been playing. And the whole point about having a heavier core is the string, if you hit it hard, is less inclined to go sharp, and it has a slightly thicker tone. It's also great if you want to do a drop tuning or anything like that, or if you just want to tune the whole thing down. But more importantly, it gives you, on this particular instrument, one of the things that we talked about last week, very briefly, was the idea of setting the height of the stop bar tailpiece in relationship to the bridge, in turn how that impacts the action, not just in the height of the action, but when you gently use vibrato or when you bend, or as something as subtle as the actual pick tension, how that impacts all of that stuff. And it's a big deal. Brenton, good morning, my friend. Thank you for your text. I got your message, obviously, because I replied to it. In any case, all of these things really matter. And the moral of the story is when I picked up this guitar this morning, I discovered that I'm going to need to raise the bridge just a little bit because I found the action is just a little bit lower than I want it to be. And, you know, this whole thing about adjusting whatever instrument that you've got to kind of make it such that the playing tension is right for your hands. And again, the big thing that I took away from kind of last week's messing around, honestly, I didn't adjust anything this week, but the week before, just kind of going, hey, you know what? I really want to make sure that that tension, how tight or loose do you want the strings to feel? Not, again, when you just hit the note, although that matters. But also as you kind of add vibrato. And it also impacts your ability to play fast on the instrument. So, in any case, let me take a quick moment and do another very important thing that we like to do around here, which is kind of this thing. It's a ritual, and it's a coffee ritual, and it's called Raise 'em Up. So do me a favor and let me know where it is that you're joining us from. My name is Doug again, if you're just tuning in. I'm drinking some community coffee from New Orleans. My buddy Griffin Gaines, let me say that 10 times fast, sent this along, and I've got it blended in with my muscle milk to build caffeine and muscle or something. Chris Alexander, I'll bet anything that you are drinking sweet tea. Gosh darn it. Could I be right there? In any case. All right. So here's the other thing. So this particular piece of gear, in fact, I'm going to do something that the funny thing is I kind of go back and forth with either loathing the concept or loving the concept of doing an unboxing. And I've never actually done an unboxing video, but I'm going to kind of get my feet wet by doing it on the air. And this is an important piece of gear, I think, for a bunch of people that are going to be watching this, because it's going to be integral to one of the rigs I'm going to be building. See if I can do this without cutting myself here. I can get it like this. That's going sideways. This is not a very sexy unboxing, I have to admit. All right. By the way, if you have a studio, have a place where things live, gosh darn it, because that way they live there. All right, this little box sent kindly on courtesy of my new friends at Sir. Thank you very much, by the way. This box is designed to solve a very important problem. Now, if you live in Boogie World, there's a device that does this called the MIDI Matrix. However, this little box here is designed to do this for any amplifier. So one of the rigs that I'm going to build is a 4-cable method rig that also has channel switching for whatever amplifier you're using. And so the real challenge is that many of the modelers that you would use do not have that functionality built in. They literally don't have the jack to send out to the amp to go, hey, time to change channels. So this little guy has got the jack going out to change channels, and it's got MIDI in and through, I would imagine. MIDI in and through. So that means you can connect it to your fill-in-the-blank modeler and use it. It takes a very, very little real estate on your board or in your rack, and you can get this to change channels on your amp. This is a big deal. So this is going to go into the 4-cable method / 5-cable method rig we're going to build. A big shout out to everybody at Sir. Like I said, the rig part of this is going to become something we're going to do on a regular basis. Dunkin' Donuts, no milk, no sugar. Awesome. That is very, very East Coast, I will say. I've got a dear friend, Matt King, who every time I see him, he's got a giant Dunkin' Double D, which I kind of like. So in any case, M. Karras, I don't know if we've met. I have a dear friend from high school, a Steve Karras, and I guess Karras means hand. Is that correct? So I take it you are one of the Greek Karras clan? In any case, welcome aboard. Hi. All right. Now, I'm going to take a quick moment, and I'm going to jump into Chris's questions, because this, again, being Doppler's Gear Garage. Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. Let's get this queued up here. There's my buddy Chris Alexander holding the V and wearing the Doppler swag. All right. Always warms the heart. So basically, one of the things that Chris always does that I just absolutely so appreciate is he sends through some questions that kind of kick things off on the gear front. And again, in a moment, we're going to kind of jump into this whole why note names matter. Like why that D? Either wants you set you up to go to that C. You know we want to go to that E right there, right? So knowing what the note names are is actually a really big deal. So we're going to walk through some of the nuance of that and some tips and tricks on how to get up and running if note names have not been your friend. All right, Chris's questions. Have I ever had an amp or piece of gear that you initially loved, or have I initially loved but grew to dislike? uh, there was an immediate piece of gear that came to mind that was a little bit of a yes and a no to that. So I love everything about my Marshall JVM 410H. It's a phenomenal amplifier, except for the fact above 4 on the master volume, you pretty much lose the headroom, which means, and there was one of the guitar camps, and it was really the first time I kind of went, this is a problem. I was playing with Joe Satriani and Paul Gilbert. There's a very cute little video of me kind of with Paul whammying Joe Satriani's whammy bar. It's very cute. Joe kind of looks over at me and Paul and kind of looks down at the whammy bar, and we're like, oh, okay, let's do this. But the thing is that when you have, especially on a smaller stage, a lot of musicians crammed in, you're right next to the drums, you need that extra lift. And in that situation, although I was well honored by the sound team, I'm kind of the lowest guy on a tonal pole. So if I'm going to be heard, I need to kind of make sure I'm able to take care of myself. So the thing is, the JVM, which I love the sound of, I kind of went, oh, I need to go back and turn up. And instead of the amp getting louder, it just got muddier. And I was like, note to self, this is a problem. Now, one of the things that we can talk about in some of these future rigs is there is a solution for that. The idea is, and it's a little early to wander off frame. No, it's not. In the distance, I see a power amp I can grab. I don't know why I'm singing, but I am. So, I am a big fan of the Seymour Duncan Power Stage power amps. They are nice and compact. They have some EQ when and where you need it to adjust either for the room or maybe whatever cabinet you're using it with. But the thing about them, let me not do that. There we go. The thing about them that I love is that you can use it to take something like the aforementioned JVM and get it to the perfect spot and just go, hey, let's take a tap off of this, and then go, okay, now we amplify the amp right at the sweet spot. And that's going to be one of the types of rigs we're going to build, because there's a number of different type of amplifiers. Matter of fact, I'm in the middle of production on a series on the Badlander. I probably said this last week. I'm still working on this. But the magic of this amp is the ability to bring up both the power amp section with the master volume and the preamp section with the gain. At this point, I actually have the gain all the way up because, well, I kind of like that. And with a little bit of delay and reverb. You get that luscious little lovely thing going on. In any case, so my big disappointment in the JVM was like at real kind of loud concert volume. I was like, man, there's a certain point where you just turn it up and it just gets muddier. At the point where you want more volume and more clarity, it kind of gave me more mud and less volume. Not what I was looking for. Aside from that, there are very few pieces of gear that come to mind other than the one pedal that I bought that I didn't like when I got it. And it was a funny thing. And before we move on, I bought a pedal. I'm going to actually name the pedal just for the sake of not bad-mouthing the company, but the pedal. It was a Dan Electroswamy pedal. It was when I was making my last record, and I was very excited about the idea of having some kind of sitar kind of pedal, and I plugged it in and it just sounded nothing like a sitar and nothing like I ever would want to ever use. It was singularly, if you said, Doug, what's the worst pedal you've ever bought? Hands down, that's it. But the amazing thing is I went online, and there are people actually want that pedal. And I think I must have sold it for as much or more than I bought it for. Go figure. Okay, there's a question about tubes that I'm not going to answer today. Now, this is an interesting question that I think is really valuable. Let me make sure I can see the chat here, just in case there's anything that's rolling in, because this is an interactive show, and the whole point about it is that we interact. Okay, hey, first of all, let's back up a step. Hang on a second. So, Jay, good morning, my man. Good to see you. Hello, hello, hello. There we go. That's what I'm going to do right there. Hello, hello, Eric Vaughn, Eric Stevie Ray Vaughan. Great. Does it bother you that I say that? Braden, I have not gotten over and listened to that track, but thank you for sending that through. Silky Tone, oh, thank you, my man. Nothing like a $600 guitar to make some silky tone. I am enamored with, the funny thing is that I wouldn't say I'm classically cheap because, I love, well, there's some, if you look at the collection of boogie amps around here, I'm obviously not like, massively like, oh, it's got to be cheap. But the thing is, I've just loved this guitar. It's become pretty much my daily driver. The other V's are back there. They get used. In any case, thank you, Brett. Always a pleasure, my friend. Junie, much love right back at you, my friend. All right, Digital Viper. Hello. Just a distraction. I did Real World Troubles. Hope you had a great birthday. Thank you very much. By the way, just a quick thank you. This, and I feel you... it has not been, let me just briefly say this. We live in a country, those of you that are in the United States and in the rest of the world, Australia's the same, Breton, where there's a divide. I want to encourage people to remember what the time in our country felt like before we're so divided, and consider making a choice as to whether we want to be divided or whether we want to try and come back together, and what things we can do to bring our country back together. That's all I got to say about that. All right. So, Doug, if you have to fly the smallest rig possible. Oh, there we go. Rig question. Bring it on. Okay. If you have to fly the smallest rig possible, pedal board, maybe even modeler, what is your bare minimum must have? Great question. So, the answer to that question is the baby sister to this amplifier is, and it may not be the exact answer you were looking for, but it's the honest answer, is the Mark V 25, and that will fit in a roll-on. So it's got cab clone IR built into it, meaning you have your choice of 8 IRs. It's got cab clone DI built in it. You do not. But it's basically cab clone DI if you need to go direct. It sounds really good. And especially if you're just going direct and not using an amp, or a cabinet rather, just dial it into whatever you're listening through, be it ears, wedge, front of house, or if you're running out into, if you have the lecture running into a speaker cabinet. So that amp, there was my buddy Chris Rocha invited me to do this thing. He has this guitar camp. And so I took that amp, I took a Line 6 HX Stomp and ran that in the loop, and it was just awesome. So that is just a really great way to do that. The other thing is there is a rig that I'm getting ready to build with the, where is that little guy? Well, it's with Tonex, and basically there is a controller that, Chris, what's the model? And I had it down here, but basically Tonex has become a really great option for fly rig. And for pieces and giggles, I hope I can find this little board. I have the case at the very least. Back in a flash. Oh, I know where the board is. So you go. This little bag right here is the bag for this pedal board. Right where? I am off camera again. Wandering around looking for said pedal board that goes in said bag. All right, it's here, but hiding behind gear. So the point being is that this little guy, what's neat about it is really easy to travel with this. It's got a cozy for your cables, so on and so forth. So that is going to be the basis for the equivalent of a small Tonex driven rig. And there are a couple of Tonex rigs I'm going to be building. One is going to be using 3 of the Tonex ones. One is an amp, one is time-based effects, and the other is stomp into the front end of the amp, and just to be able to turn those on and off. There is also, my buddy Chris sent that through, Tonex, Tone TX. So that is, let me get the other pedal here and I'll show that to you. Oh my word, I'm just all off camera today. Where is my controller? There we go. So the good folks at AirStep make a whole great series of Bluetooth controllers for a range of things. And so, the ability to use that with the various Bluetooth compliant Tonex devices is great. So that could fit on the bottom of that little pedal board there. And if you just use it with a bigger Tonex and or any other stomps that you want to incorporate in that, it's a great workflow. So again, one of the things that we're going to be doing here is there's going to be a weekly video. And one of the things that I'm waiting to have happen, and I'm very, good morning, Riley. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome aboard. And if you got any questions, please bring them. Hey. And Shane Wise, gosh darn it, thank you so much. So it was my birthday this past week. There were like 400 and some odd happy birthday wishes, and then my pleasure was I read every single one of them, and I replied because I'm so grateful to have so many people that it mattered to actually answer because I care about the people that care about me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Really, I can't tell you how much joy it brought just kind of reading through and just kind of going, wow, you know, this person I know from there, so on and so forth. So in any case, jumping back to the topic at hand, that would be it. So the rig that I've used to date as a fly rig has been, and I took that to the Petrucci camp, and it's just a monster of a little setup. It's just great. The GP, that is on the list. Thank you very much. I actually think I put it on the sheet from last week's. I actually didn't put it there, but I'm going to put it on there now. GP5. I actually brought it up and found it on the web, so that is definitely on the list. And thank you for that, Eds. I appreciate that. Good morning, Eric. Hello, hello, hello. All right. Yeah, okay. Thank you. What's going on, shredding? Awesome. Thank you. Okay. JVM 410s, it's way better with the choke mod because... hold on, that's even small for me. I can read it over on the side here. All right, first of all, Danila, welcome again. Great to see you. Hello, hello. JVM 410s, it's way better with the choke mod because more open, less compressed. If you do the C83 mod, becomes even better. The problem with the JVM is it does not take pedals that well and is noisy. So... I just can't help myself. So the whole thing about the whole model, the JVM 410H represented to me that I loved so much was through the intelligent evolution of all things Marshall. So this is an amp that when I bought one of those Boogie 412 cabinets, I traded an orange head for it, and the guy threw in this amp on the deal. So this is a DSL 100. So this is kind of part of the lineage that led up to the JVM 410H, and I ended up getting the TSL 100, which was the triple super lead. So it was a 3-channel amp that I used kind of before I bought the Mesa Boogie Road King, that I used a lot on new instrumental. And so the evolution of that to the TSL 100, and actually, sorry, there was an amp in between then, the JCM 2000, which was pretty much a terrible amplifier. Actually, I'm sorry, the JCM 2000 and the TSL, was a JCM 2000 TSL. Just like it kind of got there, but it kind of didn't. At that point, I was using it in combination with the Bosch GT6, and I think I was running into loop. So I was kind of able to kind of get to one of the places that I was happy with. However, when the JVM came out by going to a 4-channel amplifier that has 3 modes on each channel, it's a very, very powerful solution for being able to kind of craft all the different eras of Marshall tone. With the exception of the fact that when you start turning up loud, after about 4, you're kind of like, if you're using a lot of distortion on the preamp, you just kind of run out of headroom. Maybe running an extra one, then you've got, more wattage, or some of the other mods, which I have not tried doing. So I appreciate the heads up there, Danilo. Thank you for that. Yes, the famous Chris Rocha, my dear, dear friend. He is an amazing guitar player, has a signature Gretsch, and is an awesome guy. There we go. Airstep Tonex, Tone TX. All right. Good, 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 good. uh, that's awesome. All right, Sean. Hey, there's your pink strat. When do you want it back? Uh, thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it. Please geek out to your heart's content. Awesome. Well, thank you again. Appreciate it. Here's to everybody. All right. This was the question that Chris asked that I really love the most because it relates to what may be next week's kind of teaching topic. Do you have a pre-show ritual or anything that you do try to do before going on stage? Oh, I just love that. So let's see if I can keep it nice and organized before the show, before you get to the venue. One of the things that I always do, and this is not one, but I make a list of all the stuff that I cannot forget to bring with me. My normal rig these days consists of one Mesa Boogie head, two Mesa Boogie cabinets, an Axe Effects, and some sort of small pedal board. So then I start thinking, basically, when I'm smart, and I actually don't normally do this, which is really stupid, I should make that list in order of my signal chain. Guitars, extra strings, picks, instrument cables, pedal board, forgot headstock tuner, pedal board cable, and I then in turn amp, speaker cables, power cables. If there's going to be some sort of MIDI thing going on, MIDI cable. Any crucial connecting cable, like an instrument cable, like a MIDI cable. Honestly, I should be doing this with speaker cables as well. Generally speaking, the speaker cables I use are really, really high-end. I've never had one fail. I've had one that had a little bit of a short in it. But if you've got a speaker cable that works, they generally, if you don't abuse them, especially the high-end stuff, they don't seem to break. Then the cabinets, and then literally you just can kind of go down your signal chain. You go, got it, got it, got it, got it, got it, got it. And if there's something missing, you can kind of put an in error, or you put an extra space in between things just in case you need to add something. And then I put a little checkbox on the left-hand side of the document. And when I've got it all kind of packed up, I put a check next to it. Now, there's another piece of gear here that actually happens in the pre-production. That is from my good friends at Positive Grid, and that is their live box. And it is a really, really great device. One of the things that I frequently do, because I can't always afford to bring a band, is I play with tracks. And what's great about this device, and I've got it on a pole there. Hang on. Spark Live. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Spark Live. So I bought on Amazon for like 30 or 40 bucks this kind of speaker pole, and this is also kind of my acoustic guitar. Well, actually, this is another great example. So I have a once a month acoustic guitar. In fact, the funny thing is this is my most frequent gig. So I kind of every week kind of make a mental note, but the other thing is I kind of have to assemble a rig. So this is where it gets a little bit dangerous. If you don't have a regular rig that you kind of have, you're kind of like, all right, this is what I use. I always know what I'm looking for, but you kind of throw stuff together. So every time I go to do this, it's essentially the same rig, but every so often I'm pulling pedals to put it together. But generally speaking, it's two acoustic guitars, two tuners, a cable for the instrument, a cable to the pedal board, cable from the pedal board to the Spark, and then power to get from the wall to the pedal board and to the Spark. Now, the thing about bringing power is that every so often you'll end up in a situation, this happened to me on this gig, they moved me one day and I'm like, but power's over there. And so, usually you can make friends with somebody at a venue, they can find a cable for you. But moving forward, I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I've got more power options and cables than I need. Let me see if I can find, they're on the floor here. However, I'm a big fan of Furman Power, and there was an extra one of these running around in the box. Uh, what happens with these live streams sometimes, in case you hadn't noticed, is well, first of all right, this is pretty funny. I found my my board. So this is said little nano, and this is the cutest little pedal board ever. But this is going to be a fly rig that we'll build. So there you go. And case, how about that? All right. Well, basically, I am a big fan. There's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, at least 8 rack-mounted Furman power conditioners. Because the deal is, there was a gig years ago, and I am going to get back to this focal point, Focus Fox. Dr. Phil, hello, my friend. Dude, is that just not a great question? Like, holy cow. I love this. I'm going to come back and not miss any of this. Just love it. I love that shot too, by the way. All right, so here's the deal. It was at this place called The Farm. And they literally had a farm. It was kind of down by Divisadero in San Francisco. And so in the middle of our set, all of a sudden, they have these massive power surges. And at that point, I was playing with a pair of Roland STE 3000. I look back at my rack, and literally inputs are just redlining. So my signal going into, as I'm playing, has gone from kind of tickling the yellow into the red. You could run those hot. It was just all the way into the red. And I was like, oh, okay. So what I did is I pulled them out of the loop and just turned them both off. Bad power is a thing. It will happen. So having protection between you and your treasured gear is really important deal. All right. So the Furman makes, and gosh darn it, I wish I could find it. They make these, they're about 8 inputs, and there's a bunch of them on the floor, but I don't want to go stooping around with stuff plugged in. They're about yay big, and they have eight or so inputs on the top of them. And it allows me to take the confidence that I have in Furman products and put it on the floor there and be able to wander around with it. So I've got them placed in various places around the room here that you can't see, but they've been a big help. Okay, pre-show. So the reason I wanted to talk about Spark Live, pre-show ritual, especially whether you're with a band or you're playing with tracks, is to make sure you run your set top to bottom. The other thing is that, you know, for me, and again, I'm going to do a personal version of the answer. When I go to play live, I'm 61 years old. I don't exactly know how that happened, but it's reality. So when I go out on stage, it's not that I have something to prove. It's just like I can't really afford to have a crappy night. And a crappy night is almost always the result of lack of preparation. So ritual starts with getting a chance to sit with each one of the songs, getting a chance to get really comfortable with the melodies. And you know, the unfortunate thing is part of the ritual should be kind of playing all the songs on a regular basis. But right now, I'm doing a kind of a mixture of things and attempting to kind of launch these albums and keeping a track of the analytics on Spotify, which is a huge job, and just kind of getting my act together as a content creator. And the pleasure of what I get a chance to do on Saturday morning, where we just get a chance to freeform it with a little bit of structure. So the idea of sitting with the track and really just looping an individual track, and I love Spark Live because it's great. One of the biggest problems when trying to jam along with your tracks, and I don't care whether you have a band that you play with, but if you have a recording of the band, of your songs, stemming that out and being able to rehearse with the actual parts and the actual forms, or being able to edit them once you have them digitally. If you play them through your studio monitors, you start playing through your gear, you reach a certain point with the studio monitors where you reach the headroom with them. They just can't keep up with the volume of your amplifier. But what's great about Spark Live, one, because it's kind of at head level, and two, because you can get away with really an obscene amount of volume. Quite often it's over there. But I had the first Wednesday of each month, that's my acoustic gig. So I actually kind of brought this down here because I'm doing a little thing for their blog, and I wanted to test a couple of other features on this thing. So the point being is that getting a chance to also then loop solo sections. And I'm going to gently bridge the gap into the note thing here. I'm going to touch on what we're going to talk about, and we're going to come back to it. And Riley, I did not forget your question there. Oh, awesome. Sean, the pleasure is mine. Welcome aboard. Thank you. Ronnie, what's going on? Hello, my dear friend. Okay. So the deal is that one of the things as you're playing, whether it's instrumental music or you play maybe a melody somewhere or you go to start your solos, is just kind of having a bearing of where your notes are. So, let's say we're in F sharp. Being able to kind of map where those F sharps are, so you actually kind of can work your way. Because one of the things about writing songs is that if you're smart, you don't write in all the same key over and over and over and over again. So it means that you're sometimes outside of your normal comfort keys, like, I don't know, A. Where your fingers kind of, for better or for worse, go to the same spots over and over. By the way, my tentative plan for next week is going to be talking about practice rituals. So I love that the word ritual came up on this. Thanks for that, Chris. David Ritchie, good morning. Okay, and I'm going to get to the warm-up piece here as well. Thank you for that, Danilo. So here's, okay, we're going to go deeper as we do this. I love that. So here's the deal. Next week, we're going to talk about practice ritual. And one of the things, here we go. I've really been working on is just getting my left hand and my right hand more synchronized. And that literally is what I call ramp ups. And this is all interrelated, and you went there. I'm actually got it at 90, but I'll literally start at 80 BPM. Whatever exercise I'm going to do. And one of the things I've gotten into doing is this thing that I call foursies. So instead one of the exercises that I run a lot is 3-note per string speed exercise A, and I'll hit each group of 3 notes 2 times. But the hard part isn't so one of the things I will do, and I'm really focusing on, we'll talk more about this in the ritual, but I want to touch on this anyway, because this is going to be really valuable, especially Danilo with your question there. So the hard part isn't the 2 of those, it's the transition. Especially that one where we're leading with the pinky. And so the idea of working on the things that are the connecting pieces, Guthrie would describe them as the walls, the things that divide these little pieces together. And so I've been really working on trying to get my right hand faster, cleaner, looser. So we're going to talk more about that in the practice ritual. But one of the things I've been doing is I've been practicing for about 3 or 4 hours every day, slow, doing these ramp ups, just kind of identifying all the little pitfalls and then creating exercises around that. Again, we'll cover more of that in this. However, when it comes to preparing for the gig, again, I've got the tracks looping. I'll sit with the solo section and I will begin to mine different types of ideas. And so, again, using F sharp. And I kind of will have if you will, kind of a shtick, the good version of that going in a gig where I've kind of gone, okay, I've got some places that I can choose from. So in case I show up at the gig, I'm hot, I'm sweaty, I've just loaded the stuff on stage. Maybe there isn't a place to warm up backstage or isn't a backstage. Even I'm just like, I've just got to walk up. I've got to be ready to play. That's where that preparation, it's a great question, Danilo. So that happens here. And there's a couple of different types. One is like, what's happening with my hands? And this is, again, what we talk about next week, the practice ritual, is like, what is your practice ritual? What are my suggestions about going into that? And how do we better prepare to have a strategy on a daily basis where we can kind of go, I'm moving forward as opposed to I'm in neutral, or I'm kind of going in reverse. And this is, for any of the people out there that are quote unquote professionals by day, it's a real challenge. And looming in the background, in addition to a pentatonic course that I lie in bed at night and in the middle of the night when I wake up and in the morning, mapping out some of the really kind of cool things about this. And I'm not going to talk about it yet. But the idea of having strategies of how you weave the things together. Again, the main talking point today when we get to the teaching segment is going to be the note names. Well, being able to identify where your F sharp is. That was an E there. That's an F sharp. There's another F sharp, and kind of going, there's an F sharp. And again, if that's G at the 12th fret, that's F sharp. And being able to kind of find your way around these different notes. One of the other things that I've been really working on is not looking at the neck, especially when I go to play live. There's my F sharp. 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 And the idea of really getting the instrument so you're comfortable without having to look, because when we look, we play the same stuff over and over. So the practice ritual in preparation for the gig is I will loop each solo section. I'll also pay attention to the melodies, is where do I make my mistakes? And then I really identify what the note name is. So I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do. And you become mindful of the mistakes you make so you don't make them on the gig. And then you start running the songs back to back. And then just, since I'm, a lot of what I do is with tracks when I'm playing live right now, it allows me to just kind of construct a set. The other thing is I've got a looper that I deal with. I didn't put that on the list, but basically you're then, I separate the song usually into 3 little sections so I can hang out at the top of the song, kind of jam, maybe talking to the microphone. Then there's the main part, and then there's something at the end, whether it's an ending or an outro loop that I jam over. And then so I then construct an actual set, and I get a chance to rehearse. It's just the same thing that you would do with an actual band, but you can do it in this situation. So with that preparation time set, my gear checklist in place, I load all the stuff into the van and off I go to the venue. And then you kind of unpack all that stuff. And the great thing about this is that at that point, it's funny, I never really thought about this, is that I always, first of all, try and feed off the room and play to the audience and listen to the dynamics of the room and kind of how loud or soft I'm going to play to the venue. But the other thing that I do is I'm basically taking the inspired moments of sitting with the songs and really finding myself in the prep time, and I'm kind of repeating that when I play live. So in many ways, what I do at home is much more like a dress rehearsal, such that when I show up at the venue, I already have a pretty good idea of exactly what I'm going to do, except for the fact that I might play the solos a little bit differently, and knowing that in the heat of the moment, I might get more notey, which is frequently the case. But I also then kind of take my temperature, if you will. If I'm feeling notey, and this is the other thing, is it's great to watch video. I'm going to hold that thought for just a second. As you go through your show, without being overly analytical, just first of all, see where the audience is responding, see how the order of the set feels, and see how you kind of did in relationship to your prep time. Was the prep time really a dress rehearsal? Were you able to kind of go, I built upon that and either kind of took the things that were really good there and built upon them, or like I didn't kind of follow through. I always make a, where did I make mistakes? Was it any of the mistakes that I worked on when I was practicing? Then one of the great things is everybody's got video these days, so you can go back and watch it. I remember seeing this little segment from the last time I played live, and it's just fast. And I was like, if you just saw that, you would be inclined to think that all I did was play fast the entire night. And I'm like, note to self, just know that can happen. And you could just see a slow segment and go, all they do is play slow the entire night. But if you're having a disproportionate amount of fast and you don't want it to be, you got to put the brakes on a little bit. So that process, and then kind of on the ride home, just kind of deconstructing all of that, means that the next time I unpack the gear and go through that cycle again and get ready to do that, because I've got a rack. So, kind of once it's loaded up, it's kind of not usually until the next gig cycle that all that same gig gear gets put back together. But then you kind of, that recollection of what that drive home and the little mental notes you gave yourself, that instills kind of the things that you focus on as you sit down and you start that cycle again. I hope that was a help. Oh, we got a troublemaker here. Did somebody say G flat? So I've got a student that we've been having this great conversation. Where did my mouse go? Cursor. There we go. I cursor you. All right. Okay. So to answer that question, when I'm on tour, I basically play in the van, if there's a van, the entire day, when and where possible. So I will try and get a bench seat, and it's just me just doing that. Ideally, before a gig, I'll spend, if I have the opportunity to be back there, at least a half an hour, ideally 45 minutes. That's separate from any time that I will spend in a hotel room, and that's separate from any time before I will do that. So let's just say the minimum I will try and do is an hour. Now, here's the other side of this, is sometimes you're traveling, you don't have the freedom to be able to sit and practice in whatever vehicle. And sometimes you have to drive to the place. So I can't drive. You generally can't drive and play at the same time. There was one thing that I was going down to Los Angeles, and I did have the guitar in the front seat, and I was practicing with my guitar. Probably shouldn't be saying this. Nobody do this. This is an insanely bad idea, but I was on I-5, and I was driving with my knee, and it's because it's long and flat, and as long as it's not windy, it's long and flat. And I was practicing with the guitar. The headstock was actually sticking out the window. You got to watch out for bugs. Not a smart idea. I do not in any way endorse this, but it was one solution to getting some practice time on the way. Sorry, that's not a good influence. Those exercise run. So, when we sit down next week, one of the things that I really want to be able to do is talk about is just doing some stuff to just get your right hand acquainted with those subdivisions. Practice ritual. I'm really excited about that. Michael, good morning. How are you? Welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us. I think that's a new face. G flat is in the same place. So if I'm going to do that F sharp, and if I'm going to play that E, and a little bit of a preemptor, and I'm going to go back to this question about first amp rig, because it's such a great question. The smallest distance, and it's just a preemptor to the note thing that we're going to talk about, why notes matter, because they're huge. The smallest distance between any two adjacent notes is a half step. This represents a half step. The largest distance between any two adjacent notes is a whole step, which we're going to think of as two half steps put together. So if I play either a half step or a whole step above E, it's going to be some sort of either F natural or F sharp. So that's why in this instance, that's going to be an F sharp as opposed to a G flat. But there are times that will in fact be a G flat, but we're not going to go into that today. Brad, good morning. Great to see you, my friend. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Great to have you here. Mike Rand, hello. Great to see you as well. Gilberto, you're so kind and much appreciated. Thank you so much. That is an adorable photo there, by the way. Steve Garnowski, or Goronsky. The funny thing is, in my mind, it's always been Garnowski. At least now I know how to pronounce your name. Easier driving and playing in Australia. Jim, what's going on? I was Cracker Jack burger eater driving with my knees. Jim, what's going on? How do you count your fretboard in sharps or flats? Okay, so hang on. First of all, Jem, Rockstar, speaking of being out on the road, holy cow. I want to answer one question here because our gentleman up here, where did you go? In a second, we're gonna downshift into note names, and this is gonna be a heck of a lot of fun because I think this is gonna help a crap ton of people. It's a really, really big deal, and it really does matter. All right, where is that young guy that was in the stream here. I will find you. I think the name was Riley, and I think there was a photo with a red guitar. Red guitar. All right, wait a second. It's disappeared from my chat. That is impossible. Okay, well, it's asking. Hold on a second. Maybe it's not with the photo then. Awkward silence. Okay, there's the first message from Riley. There we go. All right, hey, there we go. Riley, what is the best first rig for a head and cabinet setup? I absolutely love this question. There is, imagine, you know, you don't have all this stuff. You haven't played through all these amps. You don't kind of look at an amp and kind of go, think it does this and all that. And you're just going, where do I start? Dude, I feel you. So the first thing, and so I may not be able to answer your question exactly, but I can hopefully give you some really great foundational stuff. Number one, what style or styles do you want to play? If it's in one lane, go out and look at the quote unquote, since it's the first one, we're talking about something that's a little bit more affordable. So go out and go, of the styles that I play, as I go out onto YouTube and I search for those particular, let's just say the 20 to 50 watt amps, who's using those, I go, oh, I really like that sound. Because if you like the way it sounds, you like the way it sounds. It means that when, in theory, when you get that piece of gear, you go to try it out, you're like, that resonates with me. I feel that, right? If you're needing a range of different styles to play through, that is a slightly different animal. So literally, if it's just a high gain, thing, there is a bunch of stuff. The Friedman stuff is really good. The Soldano stuff is really good. The Boogie stuff is my personal favorite. If you're needing something that does a little bit of both, this amp or the Mark V 25, they're both 25 watt amps. This guy has, let's see, I have no idea what this is going to sound like when I do this. But a little bit more gain than I want. Hang on. Now then, instantly. Actually, a little low there. The reason it's low is I can't quite get my fingers underneath the string. So the ability to have one channel that does the clean, one channel that does the dirty, and then potentially use pedals if you want to use kind of that clean channel as your basis for an in-between sort of a sound is a really great way to go. The real question is, if you're still here, Riley, why do you specifically want a head and cabinet? Because that will be really very insightful. Good morning, Miguel. Great to see you, my friend. Always a pleasure. Look at you with the Paul Gilbert guitar. Okay. Digital Viper, very kind. Holy cow. All right, let's jump into this note name thing. All right, first of all, sharps or flats. So my dear friend, Jem, asked this question kind of like, how do you measure this? So and again, so this is going to be where I'm going to have a little marker in the video, especially for anybody jumping in that didn't see the live stream or anybody rewatching. Why note names matter. A minute ago, earlier in the video, I talked about F sharp. And I also talked about the fact that as I'm playing something, that's got that relationship, but that's F sharp, and that note down below there, that note, ironically, is what's going to define what I'm going to call this an F sharp or a G flat. So the short version is the smallest distance between any two adjacent notes is a half step. So if we're here, that's C and D. And if we're here, that's C and D flat. So the deal is that, again, if you want to think about the measurement by which you name things, it starts from the C major scale. So as we climb C, it goes C, hold the D, hold the E, half to F, hold the G, hold the A, hold the B, half to C. So that's the largest distance between adjacent notes. And the smallest distance happens between E and F and B and C. All the others like C and D, D and E, F and G, G and A and B are a whole step. So we use that as our vehicle for measuring stuff. So if I'm at E and I'm playing a note that's a whole step above there, so that is to say there's no arguing with that. Then we know this guy is going to be, since it's E half to F or E hold to F sharp, this is going to be an F sharp. All right, so we take the C major scale, C, hold the D, hold the E half to F, hold the G, hold the A, hold the B half to C. And we think of that as 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, half to 4, hold the 5, hold the 6, hold the 7, half to 1. So from that, we can take that the half steps that occur between 3 and 4, 7 and 1, which for the key of C is going to be the E and the F and the B and the C. So if we take that and we move that bit of business, we got C, hold the D, hold the E, half to F, hold the G, hold the A, hold the B, half to C. I'm just doing the explanation part. And you can think of that again as 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, half to 4, hold the 5, hold the 6, hold the 7, half to 1. If we take that numeric relationship and transpose it down a string, we've got 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, half to 4, hold the 5, hold the 6, hold the 7, half to 1. And this note is a G, hold the A, hold the B, half to C, because we're at the 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, half to 4. So G, hold the A, hold the B, half to C, hold the D, hold the E. Now we're at the 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, half to 4, hold the 5, hold the 6. And that's going to be a hold of the 7 there, because the half steps occur between the 3 and 4 and, that's right, 7 and 1. What were they? That's right, 3 and 4 and 7 and 1. So if we're going from the 6 to the 7, that's a whole step. So if this is E, and we're either moving a half step or a whole step, it's got to be some sort of F. So if this is E and we're playing a whole step above there, well, from E to F, C, hold the D, hold the E, half to F, well, that's normally a half step. But if we're at E and we need to move a whole step, that's why it's F sharp and not G flat. That is this is an E note, that's F sharp. So if you move either up or down, a half step or a whole step, it will always take the next adjacent scale degree number and note name. Now, there's a thing that I, with my students, call dumb mistakes and smart mistakes. Say you're at G and you play that note a half step below there. Some people would be inclined to call it a G and a G flat. That's what I call a smart mistake. Because you're like, hey, I'm downhill from G. Oh, isn't that G flat? No. Because again, anytime you move in either direction, a half step or a whole step, you will take either the next or the preceding scale degree number and note name. Okay. Okay, hang on. I got Riley back here. So, Riley, I'm going to come back to your question in just a minute. Oh, I love that. Do me a favor. Let me know what style and or styles of music you play. Looks like you're shredding there. But I'm going to come back to your question. I'm going to answer it in depth. All right, so the deal is, that is why the key of G major, G, hold A, hold the B, half to C, hold the D, hold the E, hold the F sharp, half to G, has an F sharp. What if we take that 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, half to 4, hold the 5, hold the 6, hold the 7, half to 1 business, and we drag it down to F? As in 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, half to 4, hold the 5, hold the 6, hold the 7, half to 1. Well, that gives us F, hold the G, hold the A. Now, as we learned in the key of C, C, hold the D, hold the E, half to F, hold the G, hold the A. It's a whole step from A to B. This is F, hold the G, hold the A. But we're at 1, hold the 2, hold the 3, and the half steps occurred between which numbers? 3 and 4. That's right, and 7 and 1. So we're at the 3 going to the 4. So this is A. So this next note, if it's a whole step, it's going to be a B, but it's a half step away, so it's going to be a B flat. That's why the key of F goes F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F, F, E, D, C, B flat, A, G, F. And understanding the why of how these note names are created is really important. That way you have a clear understanding of God. I'm just taking the order of whole steps and half steps from the major scale. I'm thinking of it in terms of the note names of C major, where the natural notes are. And I'm thinking about the scale degree numbers and where the half steps occur between 3 and 4 and 7 and 1. And I'm using those guys to work together to figure out the keys. Now, somebody there is going to say, well, what about modes? Tell me about modes. How does that figure into all this? So if I went back to the key of G, as in G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and I can map it down here, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Well, if I started the G major scale off its first note, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, that's the G major scale. The A Dorian mode starts off the same group of 7 notes, but off the A note. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. B Phrygian, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. C Lydian, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. D mixed Lydian, so on and so forth. So the idea is that if I'm in the key of A Dorian, it shares the same 7 notes as G major, but I'm not thinking of G major, I'm thinking of A Dorian. Why? Well, as I play, for example, an A minor 7 chord, I want to resolve to that A. And that C. You can hear it. That E. Now, I'm not a big fan of resolving to the flat 7, but you could resolve there. Some people love that. Not my thing. So out of those notes that I can play, the A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, that A, C, and E are the target notes. And knowing them by name is a really, really, really important thing. Why? Aiming for that A. No, it's kind of obvious that, like, all right, we can aim for the A there. But what about finding that C? And so the thing about and just for piss and giggles, I want to talk a little bit more about the scale degree numbers. If I played the A major scale, that's A, hold the B, A, hold the B, hold the C sharp. I was going through the natural notes, my bad. A, hold a B, hold a C sharp, half to D, hold a E, hold a F sharp, hold a G sharp, half to A. Play there. That's the Dorian mode. So instead of going A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, we're going A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. So instead of a C sharp, we got a C. Instead of a G sharp, we have a G. But the 2, 4, 5, and 6 are the same. So that means the Dorian has a flat 3 and a flat 7 compared to the major scale. So instead of going A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, it goes A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. And then the way of doing that, because somebody just went, oh my word, my brain's melting. If I go A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, and think of that as 1, hold a 2, hold a 3, half to 4, hold a 5, hold a 6, hold a 7, half to 1. And we have a flat 3 and a flat 7. Instead of going A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, we go A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. And now gives us the ability to kind of go, all right, well, why don't we map this? A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Or I can go start from the B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Or I can go start from the G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. I can move over here, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. And again, as we're thinking about our... So not only do I know that I'm aiming for that E and that C, because I'm still kind of letting that note ring out, or that chord ring out in my head. So there I went from the C to the B. Chances are you're like, would you please go to the, not there yet, the A. And so by knowing what the note names are called, you know what they're called, so you know what you're aiming for. Now, the real advantage of this is being able to go, hey, one of the biggest problems that people have is when they start running modes. They're like, just sounds like I'm running scales. Well, you know, when you go to resolve your phrase, you want to hit a chord tone. So how do you learn how to do that? It's a great question. So those are our notes again. A, not that, the A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. A sits well. The B not so much. C, that sounds good. The D. Nah, it kind of has. You can sit there for a minute. There's your resolution. And the E, obviously. The F sharp, nah. G. The A, yes. So the A, C, E, and that octave of the A. So that's where knowing your arpeggios actually becomes really helpful. Not just for the sake of being able to be Yngwie on the arpeggios, but that's kind of always cool. But the idea of being able to go, there's my A, C, E, A, C, E, A, C, E, A, C, E, and be able to know those notes there. So that is, I've got this note. So I'm purposely, and also my ear gets used to it, knowing the target. There's a D. That C. The other thing is, if you listen to D and the A together, especially with some drive, it's not really a harmonious. All right, now the bigger teaching point here is we're going to go. Hang on, let me just check in here real quick. There we go. Oh, I love this. All right. Noted and thank you. Okay, good. The EFBC note location exercise. Excellent. Riley, I'm not going to forget about you. Let me just kind of walk through this. All right, so the deal is as follows. When we're playing over what I call the tonic chord, all of that's fine and dandy, but what happens when you go to well, the same thing holds true. So if I can play, I'm going to play the notes of, I'm going to reduce this down to the A minor pentatonic for right now. So instead of going A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, I'm going to go A, C, D, E, G, A. I'm a little out of tune. I've yanked my G string a little flat, it would feel like. More than a little. All right. So we're there on that one. So back up a step. This chord, it's an A minor chord. Take my word for it. The notes are A, C, and E. That's a D minor 7 chord, but I'm really just interested in the D, F, and A. And that chord is an E minor 7, but I'm really interested in the E, G, and B. Now this is where it gets kind of fun. If you got a piece of paper, or maybe you're on a computer, you can write this down. A, C, D, E, G. Those are the notes of the A minor pentatonic. Write them from left to right. Then down below that, write A, C, E. And the next line below that, write D, F, A. And the next line below that, write E, G, B. And then what you're going to do is you can compare the notes of that A, C, E, D, F, A, and E, G, B to the A, C, D, E, G, A, which is what your ear does. And we're now going to talk about using the note names as a bridge to be able to end your pentatonic phrases. might have been able to hear me outline. Outlining the chord changes by the notes I'm using inside the melodic playing. So with that list of A, C, D, E, G, A, and A, C, E, and D, F, A, and E, G, B, what you're looking for is the notes out of that A, C, E that are in the A minor pentatonic. So over that chord, those are the notes you're going to resolve to. Over that D chord, still playing in the same pentatonic, A minor pentatonic. The D is there, as is the A. You don't have the F in there, so that's not a note for now we're going to use. Then we go to the E minor 7. You're going to see you've got your E, G, but the B's not going to be in there. So basically that means back to the A. So the point being is by knowing the note names of your scale, being able to kind of look at the notes in your chords, and being able to cross-reference those with the notes of the chord against the scale as it's happening real time, you're able to train your ear. I mean, I should be able to outline the chord changes, and you should be able to hear it. So I should be outlining the A. D. E. I've been out of the pentatonic a little bit. Back to D. Back to the A. Back to the E. That was an interesting thing that happened. You can really hear how the root of the E chord sits well against E, and the root of the D chord, or I should say the E sits well against the root of the E chord, and the D sits well against the root of the E. The D sits well against the root of the D chord. Now, there I kind of use the concept of a motif, and I kind of let it sit. Now, I'm purposely going to let some tension build here. So I'm basically going G, E, E, D, E. Against the A chord, against the D chord. A little bit of tension there. And I don't want to sit there. That's too much tension going into the resolution of the chord progression. Let's say. I want to do something. And just kind of walk it a little bit. So there, conceptually, the note names are so valuable. Going back to the show preparation, again, if I'm in F sharp, Dorian. I do not think of that as E major. It does share the same 7 notes as E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. But I'm going to think about this scale, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D, E, and F sharp. And I'm going to start mapping. All right, this is driving me nuts. I need to erase this. Hang on. Screwdriver number 3. U. And as I mentioned last time, I have a tendency to do this in quarter turns. So a quarter turn is generally about enough to get you there. This will affect my tuning. So in a moment, I will tune. And so what's happening is the action, and the temperature is changing here seasonally while I'm here in Northern California. So I normally tune from low E string to high E string, just to answer the obvious question. So why did I start on the high E string? Because the treble strings were kind of bugging me the most, but I almost always tune from bottom to top. So I'm going to do that right now. And I'm obviously, by the amount of tuning I'm doing here, that dramatically affected the pitch. But generally speaking, just adjusting the height of the bridge does not seem to have... Still got to go higher. You can hear that little bit of bottoming out when I play fast. And so we're going to fix this. So now, again, because it's a measured amount that I'm just going a quarter of a turn, that allows me, if I go too far, and part of what happens sometimes as a guitarist kind of getting used to these seasonal changes, it's humid here, but you also, if you need to back it off, you can back it off in some sort of reasonable increment. But in a moment, you're going to notice that little bit of kind of, while I was bottoming out the action. All right, how about staying in tune now? Still a little low on the G string, but you can hear it's getting past that point. And generally speaking, I have a tendency to move both the bottom and the top. There are times that once I get closer, I will move only one side. And I will sometimes move it an eighth as opposed to a quarter once I'm getting really close. Or if I found that I've backed things off too much. In any case, what I want to do here is kind of talk about kind of mapping out different areas on the neck. And this is where the note names become really valuable, because on one hand you can go, oh, I know my shape. That'll do. All right, now I'm gonna start mapping out those F sharps and areas around that. So F sharp is functioning as the 2. So if you take your 3-note per string modes, I don't think I've got a graphic handy. Hang on a second. Here we go. So that right there is the G major 3-note per string scale. All right, so if you were to take the idea of taking those 3-note per string modes and taking just the first 6 notes, so on and so forth, and that was major. This, starting off the 2nd degree of the major scale, is Dorian, but we're going to drop that down over at F sharp. And we use that as a way to kind of create, if you will, a template up and down pairs of strings, but it also allows us to take a location like an F sharp and go, hey, that's our 2. And that means I can then go take what I did here and take that same shape and in turn, when I end up here, if that's my 2, there's my 3, 4, 5. This is my 6. And also, if I take my F sharp minor pentatonic, it's filling in the natural 6 between the 5 and the flat 7, and the 2 that's in between the 1 and the flat 3. Now, I'm kind of doing a hybrid here of what I talked about, was I'm using the note names in combination with scaled degree numbers and modal string pairs, as I refer to them. So if that's my 6, this must be my 5, 4, 3, 2. I guess that means my F sharp is right there. And if I touch, I can tell that's the F sharp there. So, numbers within numbers. What? F sharp is functioning as the second degree of the E major scale. But when I'm thinking about F sharp Dorian, I'm thinking about the root of that as it's 1. So that is I'm thinking about this scale at F sharp, the F sharp Dorian, as 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. And I demonstrated that concept before. If I played F sharp major and I played F sharp Dorian, I'm just taking the 3rd degree and the 7th degree and lowering it a half step. So instead of going F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp. Where you get into trouble is if you end up with a double sharp or double flat. That's when you know you went the wrong direction. But now we took our F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, and took it to it became an F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, and F sharp. And so that allows us to kind of, we know this is E, F sharp, and G. F sharp, G, and A. G, A, and B. A, B, C, sorry, my bad, C sharp, because that's going to be the natural thing. Sorry, that's F sharp, G, and F sharp, G sharp, and A. G sharp, A, and B. A, B, and C sharp. B, C sharp, and D. No, B, C sharp, D sharp. C sharp, D sharp, E. D sharp, E, F sharp. E, F sharp, G sharp. F sharp, G sharp, A. And now I can name, now I can go F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. I can use that instead of just going, hey, where this, where I was playing a shape, or now I'm using all that information to translate, all right, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. And F sharp is technically functioning as the 2nd degree of the major scale. So if I look at as it relates to E major, this is off the 2. But if I look at it its own root, this is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, which translates to F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp. And then and you begin to plug that in, and you're all of a sudden using the note names not just to kind of to find where your roots are, to kind of plug in these little numeric things, but then you'll also be able to run things up and down the neck. So again, if we know what the notes are, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp. And now the note names really matter. So that is why note names matter. Okay, so let me just, oh, hey, Romero, what's going on, my man? Great to see you. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. I love your photos, by the way. All right, all right, all right, all right. Okay. Okay, so what process do I implement to get better with fast scale runs? So that is what we're going to focus on next week. And what we're going to talk about is practice rituals. We talked about it a little bit today. I want to get to Riley's question. But what we talked a little bit about there was a little bit of the underlying strategy about being able to map the neck, if you will, stripe the neck, not just with shapes. And I'm a big believer, shapes are awesome. But they release the fingerboard for shape-friendly playing. But without that knowledge of what note names we're looking for, that F sharp, A, and C sharp. I don't know the note names I'm actually aiming for. It's kind of like throwing darts and not being able to see the target. We know they're chord tones, but if we don't actually know where they are, it's really kind of hard to hit that bullseye. We can use the shapes for a lot of this, where they have tremendous value if you kind of know 1, 2, there's my flat 3, 4, and the 5, right? So you can find them numerically, but that's different than being able to go, hey, you know what, I'm in the key of F sharp during that F sharp, A, and C sharp. And right there, it's going to be my C sharp. Right? A. The other thing about that, so I should be at what I think feels like a C sharp bending to a D sharp to an E. Right? Right, so that's my B, C sharp, D sharp, E. And I'll know that I'm moving up to my natural safe. That's going to be that D sharp. So the note names are a huge help. And there was a period of time where I really only looked at things in terms of scale degree numbers. It was actually happened at John Petrucci camp, and I kind of went, I'm missing something. So I decided not to miss it anymore. Okay. Getting back to Riley's question. Okay. I am an amp head and cabinet fanatic. There are, give or take, 22 412 cabinets in the room. I am a little biased. I love combos. However, when it comes to live playing, they have a tendency to sit hither and hit the back of this guy here. The end result is you're not hearing the actual sound coming out of your amp, which means that if you put a mic on that, or you're running some sort of IR that likes built into this guy, which is going to come out of the PA is going to sound very different than what you're hearing, and that will not be a good experience when you got to go back. That's not my tone. You kind of go, actually, that is my tone. And that's a lesson I've learned a couple of times. I used to use these horizontal 212 cabinets, great cabinets, and I just happened to hop down off the stage, during a sound check, and I go on and I went, I thought I'd learned this lesson. So the challenge is that if you've got a 212 cabinet that's horizontal, unless you're playing with ears, you really, really know your tone and are okay in being able to estimate the disparity between what's happening down below where your ears are pointed out. Because I can assure you, if you point your head in front of the cabinet and then point it up above it, it's a completely different experience. And honestly, one of my favorite sounds is actually the sound of a cabinet sometimes off axis. Orange amps in particular, with a 412 cabinet, the sound of that cabinet actually was best about 2 feet above the cabinet. It's one of the most beautiful sounds in the world. However, if you stick a microphone in front of the cabinet, what you're actually going to hear has way more high end. And the thing is if you then kind of take that and put that into in-ear monitors or put into your monitors, you're going to be like, man, the sound man's, they made my guitar all bright. It's like, no, you made your guitar all bright. You just didn't know. I am a big fan of a 412 cabinet, or my latest favorite is vertical 212s. And so the thing about these guys is that I've become a fan of slanted. Come on. See if I can do this without breaking anything. Getting close. All right, how about being smart? Oh, by the way, you notice what I did there as I started moving that? I grabbed a hold of the top of the amp just to make sure that it wasn't going to go rolling anywhere. So this cabinet, all right, move, Mr. Marshall. There we go. You can see has got an angled front. Why is that important? Because as you're on stage, that top part of the cabinet is playing back in your ears. And that means that it's actually playing to the back of your head, but your ears are on either side of your head, so whatever's in front of you is not that different from what's behind you. There is a subtle difference. You will notice that you seem to hear a little bit more high end in terms of things in front of you, but if you think about, back in, I don't know, caveman days, you're out there, in your Flintstones outfit, and all of a sudden something comes up from behind you. You want to be able to hear what you can't see. But I do notice, my hearing at least, I seem to pick up a little bit more high end by the things that are in front of me. And if you think about kind of when we have dialogue with people, we're facing them, right? So would be a logical reason why, our ears, and if you think about them, they are kind of facing forwardy like this. Okay, all that to say, my suggestion would be a vertical 212 because they're flipping awesome. And if you feel the need to play in stereo or have some spread between them, so you can see between that 412 cabinet there and that 412 cabinet there, there's a third one in the middle there. But I'm a stereo fanatic, or dual mono, or just a mono amp with two cabinets. However, since you're kind of starting out, that would be a place to start. And again, the advantage of having a head versus a cabinet, because a lot of kind of people go, oh, the cabinets, the combo's really convenient, which it is. Got a pair of combos back there that are beloved to me, but if you notice, they're up at ear level on top of 412 cabinets. Now, the other thing that you wouldn't necessarily know that I'm going to kind of clue you in on, and I'm going to get back to your styles here real quick. First of all, Paul, I see a question there. I'm going to come back to you and grab that. Hello, Norman. Pleasure. Albert, hello. Ada, great to see you. Hang on a second. All right, Riley. I play metal, rock, and blues, but yes, lots of shreds. So generally speaking, the higher gain of the vibe you go for, the more you're going to want a cabinet that maintains a tight, closed back and projects the sound forward. Almost all the combos out there have an open back. And so as an end result, they are looser in terms of the way they project the sound. The other thing that is good and bad is the sound comes out of the back side, which is what's kind of neat, is a combo has a little bit more of it fills the space rather than projects the sound, if one were to describe the biggest difference. And part of that is filling, if you're on stage and there's a kind of a wall or a curtain behind you, usually the curtain is in front of a hard surface, so the sound's going to come out of the back of the cabinet, hit that curtain and the surface behind it. It's going to kind of dissipate onto the stage and give you this kind of what I call a wash, which is a lovely thing. However, that's very different than that is probably a big part of what you're looking for, that tightness. Then the other thing is kind of go, okay, well, let me take a look at all my favorite players. Of those that are using amplifiers, do I like Boogie? Do I like Marshall? Which of the different flavors that are out there do I like the most? And try and find that. Then also, since you mentioned kind of the blues thing, that blues means a bunch of different things these days. I'm going to kind of do one of my other favorite things about this amp. All right, so you're going to get an amp lesson. So this particular amp, and when I turn the power amp section all the way up, you'll hear a little bit of hum. And I'll try my best to keep an eye on my input level so I don't peak anything. So let me just do this here real quick because I'm coming direct. And I'll need to keep an eye on my levels there. But all right, there we go. All right, so we got, so I've got the gain, also known as preamp. I've got that all the way down. Got the master, it's a power amp, all the way up. You do get a little extra hum there. And that guy, and so this is kind of the traditional thing. When you listen to preamp section get turned up, you have a tendency to get hiss. When you hear the power amp section turned up, you get a little bit more of the hum, because that means that amp is just going, I'm ready to be nice and loud. So the deal is, let's explore the two extremes. So here is the preamp control, and this is how you're going to use your amp for your more metal-son. And I'm going to, for right now, I'm not going to adjust any tone controls. So, all right, now let's go to the opposite extreme. I'm going to turn the preamp down and the master all the way up. And now what's happening? We've got it. I'm going to add a little bit more preamp gain. I'm going to back the master off just a little bit. And I want to be conscious of not driving the front end here. So there you go. So the preamp gain is just a little bit under 9 o'clock. The master volume is at about 2-ish. One of my favorite places to live with the Badliner amp. So there, what we're doing is we're using the power amp section being nice and hot. That's where... So it's not clean. It's got some stuff to it, but it's the overdrive of the power amp section. Then you can bring the gain up. And you start to get more. Now it's not full shred territory, but you... You can definitely get there. And if you think about a lot of kind of Eddie's tones, he wasn't actually super distorted. So you don't actually have to have this thing cranked to get there. So the point being is the balance of those. Now this particular amp, oh, right, sorry, I'm in the, now the other thing about this amp, there are 3 modes. There's a clean mode. All right, now we've got some headroom back. I'm going to bring the preamp volume down. I'm going to bring the master about here. So nice and clean. Now I can do the same thing on the clean channel. I'm going to bring up the preamp volume, also known as the gain. back to the middle channel here. I should say the middle mode of the second channel. These two channels are identical. Now we're going to go into the highest gain mode. And now we bring the master down, bring the preamp volume at about 9 o'clock. So you got more gain on tap. Let me get a little bit more volume. Oops, sorry. So, all that to say, I could set this lower channel, which one I'm in, exactly as I want it, and I can do the exact same thing with the upper channel. This is basically what you would call it, kind of call a twin channel amp. They have what Mesa Boogie calls channel cloning. The two channels are identical, so any of the things you just saw me do there, you could do with the other channel and set one exactly the way you want it, and set the other way you would want it. And then with pedals, you can kind of, again, if you want one set for clean, oh, how about being in tune there? How about all the way in tune, not partially in tune? When you do start messing with the bridge there a little bit, you will have a little... There's a certain amount that the neck will feel the change in tension as well. And it'll move a little bit sometimes, and that happens. All that to say, that stuff that I wish... How old are you, Riley, by the way? There's a kind of a, dare I say, a teenage vibe going on, which I think is exceedingly cool. Those are the sorts of things that I kind of, you know, in my gear... Really cool YouTube video. There's a great video. I don't know if it was Drumeo, but it was the drummer from Snarky Puppy, as I recall. I think going through the different levels of complexity of drumming. But it would be really cool, and I think I'm going to do it, of the different levels of rigs. Now, I'm going to do that in this individual rigs and kind of talk about the component sets that I put together and why. But I think it would also be really good to have kind of like, here's some different rigs that are cool. So in any case, I really appreciate that question. Oh, wait, no, cancel, stop. So, okay. So there, all right, hang on a second. So there were a couple more questions. O'Reilly, I really like the sound of the Mesa Boogie. I'm not going to lie. You know, I'd be inclined to agree with you. 15, almost 16. You kind of had that vibe. Awesome. Well, first of all, welcome to the Gear Fanatics Club, and welcome to Doppler's Gear Garage. So glad you tuned in. And, you know, the thing is that, you know, you're at a perfect age, first of all, with the power of the internet. Here we are, with all the great gear that's on the market. I'm waiting for, I didn't finish mentioning this, the good folks at No, they're not the folks at Positive Grid. My friends over at, here we go, little product spotlight here. IK Multimedia. They have a powered cabinet solution, and they're about $700 a pop. They are in the process of sending me a second one. So for the kind of the IK Multimedia driven rig, it's going to be probably a couple of videos, but at least one of them is going to feature a pair of those cabinets. So, you know, we're in a day and age where a lot of players end up using some sort of a model and then some sort of way of amplifying it. Chances are at your age and with the sort of playing you're going to want to do where you're going to be at home, maybe in your bedroom or in a garage, and then you're going to go to a friend's house or you're going to rent a rehearsal space or you're going to play at your school or whatever, having an amp and a cabinet, there's nothing like an amp and a cabinet. This is, by the way, the Mesa Boogie. This is the Badlander 25. It's a great amplifier. This is their 212 vertical cabinet. This is not cheap gear, but it's great. And I'm glad you dug the tone. So, you know, we love gear. We love building rigs, and that's a big part of what we do. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for hanging out. All right, Braxo, what's going on, my man? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Awesome, awesome. Bent Tom, hello, hello. Want to hear someone getting started playing live? I'm always happy to remember how old I am, right? How exciting. I mean, just like, holy cow. Ada, what's going on? Regarding soundproofing my room for guitar playing, can I soundproof just one area where the cabinet is pointed at my doors, or should I do something else? Love that question. So, per Griffin Gates, who I don't think is with us today, but it's definitely with us, and I got to jump in a minute, is that there is a device from that I've got. There are two different solutions I've got in my house here, that and one of which is going to be part of the rigs side of things. So the folks at Mojo Tone have sent me what they call an ISO cabinet. So it's an enclosed cabinet, and the advantage of that is multifold. So you're soundproofing my room for guitar playing. So let me ask you a question, Ada. You've got the orange 112, as I recall. So soundproofing a room can be really, 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 really expensive. So so to answer that question, however, where hang on, come into the cast there. Well, that's going to be too small for some to read. All right, again, the full course. I have a question regarding, and I'm going to scroll back up because I think there were a couple of other I just briefly want to talk about this. I'm going to jump back to your question in a second, Ada. Knowing the notes is important, especially when you blaze away using the patterns and create a nice long run, but don't know the notes. The dismount is tough. So I just need to answer that real quick. So let's see. We're gonna. So there what I'm doing is kind of building some run that I'm targeting that C sharp. Right, so I'm building that. So I know that if I'm in F sharp, basically Dorian, and that's a little sequence that I was going, basically 3, played 2 twice, and then 2 played once. That gives us 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a. There's our dismount. So if you kind of have, you know the notes you want to end on, then you can start to build some of your phraseology, your runs. So that was, basically, I'm playing the first note two times instead of going. Actually, I'm going to keep it that way. So I'm just going up F sharp doing, and I'm just going. So I'm being conscious of how I'm going to end my phrase. I'm building some runs that you're like, hey, these are runs that I just do that are things that I purposely do in repetition. And then the part to... that little bit right there. You also might, if you just want to practice this, you mentioned the dismount. That's taking that second to last spot, then the last spot. So on and so forth. All right, back to this question. Ada, you said, I have a question regarding soundproofing my room for guitar playing. Can I soundproof just one area of where the guitar cab is pointing and my doors, pointing at and my door, or should I do something else? Okay, so the answer to that question is, one of the things that you can do, and it's not, depending on how loud you get, if it's crazy concert loud, it's a different thing, but you can take a closet and you can completely, there are a couple of different ways to go. The cheap way to go is buy a bunch of moving blankets and coat the inside of that closet, and it will reduce some of the sound. It will, however, make your amp sound like it's in a room with a bunch of moving blankets. It's not necessarily going to give you this beautiful warm reflection like you hear when the amp is out in the room. However, by putting it in the closet and putting some sort of absorption in there, and one of the other things you could do, I don't know if you've ever seen the hospital beds, sometimes they have these little kind of foamy, cushiony sort of things, or sometimes you'll see it like, it looks like the things, egg carton, but it's actually made out of a foamy material. Actually, it may be a fire hazard, so double check and make sure whatever you put in there is not a fire hazard. But the point being is you can put some sort of absorption on the walls, and there's also stuff from folks like Orlex that you can coat the walls of your closet. The Orlex stuff, though, however, will potentially adhere to the wall, and then when you take it off, you're going to have a problem, right? So the idea about finding some sort of absorption to put in there that isolates the sound, or at least reduces the amount of sound escaping through the walls. And then you can open that door and have it face you in the room. So that is, say, if there's a closet, and let's just say it was straight ahead of me, I could isolate that, but then when I open the door, it opens up. Now, we have an area in the house that was kind of an alcove. There used to be a makeup area, and we sealed it in, and we put up a lot of absorption in that space, and it is largely, thanks to the big doors that we put on that area, soundproof. It's not totally soundproof, but it dramatically reduces sound by being able to enclose that space all the way, and then you put a microphone on it. However, what you're talking about is the ability to have some of that sound spill out. So ideally, you would want that door to be able to open in such a way that's kind of directing the sound at you, but not just kind of spilling out into the rest of the house. I hope that answered your question. It's a great question. Albert, there we go. How you doing, my man? And yes, the head in the cab equals flexibility and the ability to, you know, the interesting thing is that generally speaking, a head and a cab. What was I talking with the other day? We were talking about the weight of you know, the ability to move things, and a combo, because the amplifier and the speaker are in the same unit, they're really heavy. So generally speaking, as much as these heads can get heavy, so it's pretty light, the ability to separate them out from the cabinet makes it an easier move. Again, I think I already said hello, but hello, Norman. Yes, Michael. So we were going to absolutely be talking about that in this next week, but I think we just kind of, you know, I'll briefly touch on it. So one of the things is we talked about. So what is the ending? So we had, how does it, the landing, how do we loop that? Hold on, I went. And again, the hard part isn't it's a, so besides the wrong note there, the idea is if this is F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, and G sharp, and A again. The hard part isn't going. But the hard part is the transition of the second and the first. Up. And just working on those little transition spots there. And that'll just be a great way to do that. Again, as we talk about practice rituals next week, some of those things that I'll specifically work on, well, I got one last idea for everybody. I don't think I've shown this to you here. So basically we're going the first finger to each 6th finger. The hard part, as I mentioned, is the transition from the second. So how do we work on just getting those transitions? Well, this little exercise has us doing that, but it adds a little picking. So we're going. Sorry, hold on. So that's first, we're just one pick stroke. 2. 3. 4. So what you got to watch out for on the dismount, I did 3 instead of 4. So make sure that your last one, it's easy, just like you got to butter to the edge of the bread with your attention. All right. Hey, I got to get out of here. I wish everybody an awesome, awesome week. Thank you for all the new people that stopped by. Riley, what a pleasure. I hope that was a help. Ben, Tom, Braxel, always a pleasure. Turkey vultures. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, everybody, great to see you. I'll see you next week. Lots of great stuff. Thanks for hanging out today. I really appreciate it. Bye for now. Cheers. Thank you again.